What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Poll Rundown. This one is on the the cusp of me making a bit of a return to RuneScape. We're doing lots more RuneScape stuff on the stream, so if you're interested in that stuff, we're doing raids. I'll be getting Dragon Slayer 2 done, lots of stuff. Anyway, figured I'd get that out of the way. This quality of life poll, a lot of really simple stuff. Most of this stuff is very unassuming. There's a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to move through this poll very quickly. And again, a lot of this is really pretty unconsequential. Feel free to correct me in the comments, guys, as usual. If there is something in here that I'm missing, the big, the big change that would happen because this, a certain item or a certain quality of life thing, as is a lot of the times the case with quality of life changes, sometimes they bring about things that we weren't necessarily bargaining for when we wanted the original thing. So most of these are pretty cut and dry. However, there are a few that I could maybe see some fishy stuff happening, but prediction just ahead of time, I expect everything here to pass with flying colors. A lot of it is pretty much just no-brainer stuff. These first few questions are about peak options at basically pretty common PvM places. The first one is the Lizardman Canyon. The second one being the Monkey Madness 2 area, the tunnels, I don't know, whatever you want to call them. The third one is the agility shortcut at the Calfight Queen, and that's the three. There's just three peak options. Pretty simple. The peak option, if you don't know what that is already, you can basically walk up to an entrance to a cave, or basically any sort of place that there's going to be a quick loading screen. You can right click, you can peek, and the game will tell you how many people are inside of that area. And this is basically to just make it easier when you're hopping worlds to try to find an open one. Not only does it reduce toxicity and crashing, but it, just makes things more convenient. So I'm always a fan of these peak options. Again, I don't see anything wrong with adding them into the game. Moving forward, this one is... this one's a big change. And I will say that this one, I personally will probably be skipping. And obviously you'll see me click skip question, but this is one of the few that I've kind of singled out as, this could be weird. This could be really weird. But essentially, for years and years, if you click the special attack bar and you do not have enough energy to use it with your weapon, essentially, you would not attack. There would be this weird null attack. You would just basically kind of be crippled for a long period of time. This would essentially make it so that your attack still goes off, but obviously without the special attack because you don't have the energy to do it. Has a lot of implications, this does, for PKing, PvM. While it does seem like one of these obvious quality of life things, I'm not really sure where this lands. So to avoid getting in hot water, I'm skipping. But quite honestly, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, I think most of everything in this poll is going to pass. So there you have it. Should there be a new orb added to the bottom left of the minimap which displays your special attack energy bar? Again, quality of life, but does end up changing quite a lot about the game. Displayed special attack is something that a lot of third-party clients have. Bringing it to the main game would certainly bring it in line. It's kind of why we like third-party clients. It makes the natural game that much better. But again, this does have quite a big impact. This one, however, since it is a heavy third-party client feature, basically, in one way or another, I think it should be brought to the main game. Again, one of those things where competition, always a nice thing. Moving forward, should the reward from the Champions Challenge be improved by offering XP lamps that provide 10 times the standard XP normally received for each champion slain? And of course, if you've already gotten them done, you can get some more. I think the Champions Guild certainly needs a little bit of a buff. Anyone hunting champion scrolls does it because they just kind of want to. There's not really great rewards to it. I'm a big fan of buffing those rewards, so I'm voting yes on that one. Not so much a quality of life change. Gosh, Jagex, I read this poll, I thought only quality of life changes. But yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think, again, any old content that can get just a slight little boost, especially stuff that's not being used a lot, I like it a lot. Should herb seeds appear on top of other less useful seeds? Again, just a quality of life thing. I would like my herb seeds to show up higher than potato seeds. Let's put it that way. Pretty easy on that one. Should Dagonoth bones appear on top of Dagonoth hides? This is for anyone at the DKs. It's basically a left click, is essentially all they're changing here. Instead of picking up your loot and then the bones, or rather the loot and then the hide right after it, this would put the bones above it. RuneScape has always had the bones on the bottom, so I'm tempted to vote no, just because I don't want that change. I think this is one of those things that it's one of those coddling questions. It's like, oh, you can't right-click to get your bones. You're gonna have to right-click anyway because most of the loot at Dagannoth Kings is pretty terrible. I honestly don't see any reason for it. So I'm voting no. And this is one of those no votes that, for me personally, is kind of like, you know what, devs, save your time. I know that's probably going to take half an hour, but you know what? We really don't need that. This change, as someone who raids a lot, is a fantastic one. TLDR, reducing the number of planks it takes to make the chests inside the Chambers of Xeric. It's one of those things you go off and you kill those freaking scavengers for 5 minutes just to get a chest up. Reducing the number of planks you need is something that's gonna it's just gonna be nicer. The next few questions are in that same vein. This one is if someone gets a drop from inside the Chamber of Xeric, basically any of the bosses previous. Basically when you're fighting bosses inside raids, and I know a lot of people aren't familiar with this stuff, but when you fight the bosses before the final boss, Olm, you get drops. You get potions, you get stuff like that. If the name of the player is displayed, it's going to make trading potions a lot easier. It also is unclear if you get the drop or not. And a lot of the times those potions are very useful for moving forward, and keeping track of them is rather important to a raid being, quick, clean, and efficient. So I'm a big fan of this being broadcast. I think it's a pretty easy fix. Jagex has proven to be pretty good at putting in loot broadcast stuff, so an easy yes on that one. This one, in the same kind of vein, but kind of nicer when you're forming parties for raids. Should it show how many kills those people have? I like this a lot. I think it's going to make for basically people just grouping up on the outside of the raids a lot easier to make functioning groups. I think it's great. So yes to that as well. A couple more raid questions, and by a couple more I mean one more. Should a bronze axe spawn be added to the ice demon in the Chamber of Xeric? They've already added a tinderbox. I think a bronze axe spawn is more than reasonable. Again, cutting down the amount of time it takes to do these long, boring rooms so you don't have to go off and kill scavengers. I think that's a great idea. Moving on to rune dragons, and essentially making it so that people on Slayer tasks, if they so choose, can do more rune dragons. I think that's perfectly reasonable. It's one of those things that not a lot of people are going to be buying the ability to kill more rune dragons on their Slayer tasks, but those who really like them, they can go ahead and do that. I think that's a great idea. XP drops for players with 200 million skills. It's only fair. XP drops are used for a lot of things other than just seeing how much XP you're gaining. There's a lot of timing and skilling. I think that's, again, more than reasonable. And now on to a bunch of annoying stuff. When there is an existing item retrieval service that requires payment, essentially if you die and need to reclaim your items, like with Vorkath, such as Torfin, should it be possible for the money to be taken directly from your bank if you don't have it in your inventory? Yes, perfectly reasonable. Shouldn't even be pulled. Again, one of those things that I don't know. Another interesting one here, Jagex addressing the essentially massive surplus of Kraken tentacles that are in the game. This proposed sync would allow you to use 10 tentacles to upgrade your trident to hold 20,000 charges of a spell. It's going to be rather expensive. Kraken tentacles are already above 600k, which essentially means you're going to pay 6 mil to upgrade your trident. This is just a convenience factor. Only people with tons of money, at least 6 million to spare, are going to want to use this. And I gotta say, I think it's probably going to fail at doing what it wants to do. This is a very expensive upgrade for what really amounts to just not having to click a couple runes every couple of hours. So I don't think this is going to make Kraken tentacles suddenly rise in price. I also don't think it's going to make them a very significant item sink. Sure, we're going to make the tentacles rise in price really quickly, like they have right now. They will crash back down, and unfortunately, we'll still have more tentacles coming into the game than are leaving. So it doesn't really help much. I would love to see something like turning the tentacle into, I don't know, a food source somehow. You know, you chop the tentacle up into a million little pieces and you can add it to an existing food to make it heal more. Something like that. We just need something that's actually going to be used over and over and over, like they did with Zulrah. Chop the pieces up, chop the drops up into scales, and scales are constantly being used. We will never have enough. We need to see something like that for tentacles. While this is a interesting thing, there's really no harm in it. It's not going to solve the problem. So I'm voting yes, obviously, but it's not gonna solve the problem they want it to. It's a start, but we need more. Moving forward, this is simply just a graphical update to the Grotesque Guardians. Essentially, let's make it look better. Absolutely. A kill timer for Grotesque Guardians. Absolutely. Competitive slaying, always fun. This is a very simple one. Should other currencies like Tokkul and Numalite drops be added to your inventory while wearing a Ring of Wealth? Absolutely. Makes sense. Then we've got one of my personal favorites from this poll. Should a counter be added when burning chewed bones from Mythral Dragons? Those of you who have ever chased after a Dragon Full Helm, I wish I knew how many chewed bones I've burned. This will probably get me to do some sort of Mythral Dragon challenge in the near future, so definitely something I'm into. I love it. Moving forward, one of those updates that should have been in the game for basically a long time, but never was for whatever reason. Should the Crystal Halberd deal full damage to the Court Beast? Absolutely, it's a Halberd. If Halberds are doing full damage, the Crystal Halberd should also do full damage. At least that's my opinion. Should a new right-click option be added to the Dwarf Multi-Cannon to empty any cannonballs? Yeah, absolutely. There's uses for it, I'm sure. Not sure what they are, but there's definitely uses. I think if you're maybe switching between different types of cannonballs for whatever reason, why not? These next two questions are essentially making chompy bird hunting easier, making things that are normally click an item and click the area to do it, just making them left clicks. We start with the gas bubbles and then as well with the swamp toads. I'm a little jealous, seeing as I already got my chompy pet, but that's definitely going to help with chompy bird hunting, make it not as much of a pain. Moving onwards, I'm like totally... I'm trying to go so fast, guys, because I don't want this poll rundown to be 80 minutes long, so forgive me. This next one is rather interesting. It's talking about bringing the Staff of Light into RuneScape, which when I first heard, I was like, ooh, Staff of Light, are we getting Ice Strike Worms? I kind of really enjoyed Ice Strike Worms when they first came into the game, but this is a little different. It's essentially turning the Staff of the Dead into a Saradomin item. And it can cast Saradomin Strike, potentially. I don't really see anything wrong with it. I don't know where this will come in handy, but I personally don't see any harm in it. The next one, again, should the Staff of Light be able to auto-cast Sarah Strike? I think that's good as well. Sarah Strike is a really good spell. It drains prayer points of the person you're attacking, and I think that's rather cool. It's really cool for PvM. PvP. Gotta love draining the prayer points of those enemies you're fighting. Monsters and things like that. It's just great. But either way, yeah, let's let it cast Saradomin Strike. Why not? Every other spell has something that auto-casts it. I think Sarah Strike should have something as well. Should we add right-click options to the Occult Altar for changing spellbooks? Again, something that just makes sense. It's just a simple thing. If you can't use your 99 Magic Cape, it is a pain in the ass to go anywhere. The Occult Altar, I think that's a pretty interesting thing. I'd like to see it in action. Could add some interesting activity to that area. Should the Soul Bearer have a left-click option added, which puts all ensouled heads from the inventory into it? The Soul Bearer is an item you can do a mini quest for in Zaya. All those monster heads that you get all the time, essentially those go into the Soul Bearer. If you have heads in your inventory, I guess this just, well, you have to manually put them in the Soul Bearer, so it's going to be rather nice if this passes that you can just click the Soul Bearer, and then they all go in there. Pretty nice. And finally, this might as well be the end of the poll because it is the most important question here. Should the pet Dark Core dropped from the Court Beast have a transmog option added, allowing you to turn it into a mini version of the Court Beast? Yes, yes, please God, yes. This is not only a pet of mine, but it has been promised to us for so long. Initially, something, too many polygons is essentially what we were told. This will be great. This is what should be one of the best pets in the game, and it is garbage. So yes, absolutely, I would love to see this happen, and I am super biased, so definitely vote yes. Should it be changed so that the spawns special attack lizard shamans use will no longer happen in quick succession? I honestly don't know anything about this. Again, I have no idea. I think the spawns are talking about the little purple Barneys that show up, and it means that Lizardman Shamans can't use that multiple times in a row. I don't honestly see anything wrong with that. I think maybe if you're farming a D Warhammer in that sort of circumstance, it might be a bit of a pain, but in raids, it's just another obstacle. It's really not that hard to avoid. So I'm skipping it. I don't know enough about the place in the game that this is happening to really give you guys, give this question a good vote. Moving forward, should it be changed so that the knockback special attack Callisto uses will no longer happen in quick succession? This I have experience with, and yes, this is bullshit. Any nerf to the wildy bosses to make them a little easier is a good nerf. Because guess what, folks? If you're out killing wildy bosses, you're wasting your time. None of the rings, aside from the Ring of the Gods, maybe, are useful. The Zerker ring is mathematically better in every situation. Every situation. I promise you, you do not need these other rings. Do not buy them. Okay? Your DPS is higher with the Zerker ring. +8 strength will always be more valuable than +8 in any attack stat. That's just how it goes. It's kind of like currency, essentially. +8 in strength may be the same number as +8 in attack, but the benefit you get from +8 strength is way more than +8 in an attack stat. The gained accuracy is not going to make up for the extra damage you're doing with a Zerker ring. So yes, nerf this boss, please God. And make all the wildy bosses a little easier to kill. They're just not worth killing. And if you're trying to rejuvenate the wilderness, Jagex, looking at you, that last one kind of worked for a day or two. Making these bosses a little more worthwhile to kill might be a good idea. By the way, I have no idea. This is like, we've talked about this on my stream a lot. The fact that those rings are worth anything makes no sense to me, and it really just has to do with the fact that they're relatively rare. There are certainly more Zerker rings in the game than there are tyrannical rings, but it also has to do with the fact that most people just don't know the math behind RuneScape damage. That's just kind of how it goes. It's all based on the monster you're fighting's defense, because your accuracy goes against their defense, and then your strength obviously rolls to see how high you can hit. If you have a Zerker ring, you add higher damage numbers to that roll. End all be all, so far, as far as I'm aware, and again, feel free to correct me in the comments, there is no monster that is tanky enough that makes these rings worthwhile. There you have it. And finally, and this video is almost 20 minutes long, I can't believe it, we failed miserably. Should it be changed so that the teleport special attack and the Chaos Elemental no longer happen in quick succession? I'm actually voting no to this. I love the Chaos Elemental teleporting you multiple times when you're in the wildy. I think it's an interesting little thing that happens. And this is changing something that has been in the game for a really long time. I don't see it as a problem. I think it's one of those bosses that should be ridiculous. And yeah, I kind of like it. So I personally am voting no. However, I can see why you'd vote yes. It is a bit of a pain in the ass. And, well, maybe it just ought to go away. But I'm voting no. And finally, the cooldown of Vedian's magic attack be increased from 10 to 15. Once again, a nerf to the power of a wilderness boss. I am all for it. If it gets more people killing it, if it means that they're a little easier to kill, I'm all about it. Because, again, they're way too hard for what they are. But that's going to do it, guys, for the PvM Suggestions 2018 Quality of Life poll. Get out there, jump on in-game, head to a polling booth, get your votes in. And please, don't forget, inform yourself before you do anything. Read the dev blog. There will be a link in the description of the video. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.